welcome back to a brand new episode of Who What Now Gaming, the podcast for consumers by consumers, where we ask the questions: who are you, what got you into gaming, and what type of gamer are you now? I am your humble host, Josh Stewart, and today we have an absolute treat, fantastic guest, co-host to Adventure AI and Mulling It Over. Welcome, Jason Conforto. How you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me, Josh. I've been listening to your show. I started after we connected, and so I listened to all your episodes, and I love your show. I think you're doing a great job. I think this is an awesome podcast, and I'm excited to be here.
Dude, thank you so much. That truly actually means a lot to me.
It's cool. I know sometimes it's hard to get stuff started, and I'm just inspired by people who jump in. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get stuff done. And yeah, I think that's rad. So good job.
100%. I put it off for a while because I didn't think that I fell into that pattern where I was like, I don't what I have to say isn't important. So I just kind of kept putting it off. And then one day I was like, if I keep putting it off, I'm never going to do it. And so I was like, I got to start this. I got to do this and stuff. And honestly, the amazing people that I've met through this entire project has been this has been the coolest year, I gotta say.
Yeah,
this has been
that's awesome,
cool.
man.
But we're not talking about me today. So first things first, for anyone who doesn't know, how about you introduce yourself? What do you do? What are you about? Give us a solid introduction.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, which I'm going to put at roughly 100% of your audience is probably what we're looking at now. Yeah, so my name is Jason Conforto. I'm a filmmaker professionally, so I do documentaries, TV commercials, anything that people pay me to do. I've got a feature film that I've been working on. We've been trying to raise money for about 11 years, and we are about to finish our deal with Tubi. So it looks like we'll get funding for a feature film here pretty soon, and so I'm excited to do that and have a feature that I'll be producing here coming up. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. It's really cool. But I live in Utah. I do film full time. I podcast on the side, and that's kind of who I am and what I do.
Dude, that is awesome. Are you still raising money? You said in the beginning there you still have like the fundraiser thing going?
Yeah, so we've been trying to raise money. I know how to produce films and stuff, but I'm not great at raising money. So that's kind of and that's one of a producer's major jobs, right? So but we got a couple of the producers that joined our team and had a relationship with Tubi. And so we actually had to recently return some money to a bunch of investors because Tubi's like, hey, if we're going to do this, we're going to do all of it. And so we had to take care of some investors that had invested early and then let Tubi take over the process. So
okay. Well, the reason I ask is because at the end of the show, I always like to throw any like links and stuff out there for all of my guests. And honestly, I have loved everything that you have done so far, and I would like to at least put that link in the description of this episode, just because honestly, dude, this stuff is gold. I have been loving this stuff, to the point where, so my job has had a recent policy change where we're no longer allowed to listen to podcasts and stuff and music and stuff while we're at work. And so I've been using my outside of work time to listen to this stuff. And the other day, my wife actually had to finally tell me to stop talking about Dungeons and Dragons and stuff because I'm listening to Adventure AI, and so there is, for anyone who has not checked out Adventure AI yet, I would highly suggest, we're definitely going to get into it, but I would highly suggest starting in season 6, episode 1, the beginning of the holiday one shot, and it is so brilliant. Jason, this is a gold one shot.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed it so much, to the point where so we were having a conversation with one of my buddies and I, and we re-listened to the first episode just because your commitment to the Santa Claus bit is so good. So honestly, I don't. I think that's probably the best place to start. Like I want
I,
to start right into this. Where like hit me with it.
Yeah, no. So I totally agree. I think the holiday episode is by far our best episode. Playing Dungeons and Dragons for an audience is difficult, right? And so there's been a big learning curve. Season one all the way up through I think season seven we just finished. But yeah, it's hard to play D&D where your audience is all audio, right? So they're just
Right.
listening to it. So it's a lot of theater of the mind that you've got to get into. We don't have any minifigs or anything on the table that the players are looking at, and then you've got to
Mm-hmm.
dumb down combat quite a bit, right? Because
Yes.
combat can be so boring. For the listeners, right? And honestly, combat when you just play Dungeons and Dragons can be boring for the players too. If it
Mm-hmm.
takes a half an hour before it gets to your turn, and then it's finally your turn, you attack twice, you miss both times, and then you wait another half an hour before you can play the game again. And so there can be some problems. And Dungeons and Dragons is a combat game, right? Like all the
Yeah, very
mechanics are
much.
based around combat, and you can do
Right.
stuff outside of combat. And so so the balance of that's hard, but yeah. So Adventure AI, I guess for those who aren't familiar with it, my co-host and I decided to make a Dungeons and Dragons podcast specifically so that we could play Dungeons and Dragons. Right? There's no like if we're gonna have a hobby, let's like turn it into something where we're doing something a little bit productive. And so that was kind of the thought of like, how can we do this, make it entertaining, but also make it different than all the other D&D podcasts that are out there. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of them, and they're great, they're entertaining. But the thing that we decided to do to make it different is to play Dungeons and Dragons with artificial intelligence. And it kind of blew our mind what AI can do and what it can come up with and how it can spark ideas that you weren't expecting. And so we for a season, all of our episodes are, or I'm sorry, all of our seasons are a single adventure that we go on, a one shot. So episode one, we do character creation where we let the AI tell us what characters we're playing and a little bit about them. In the very first episode we ever did, we let the AI name itself. And so it named itself it named itself the Language Lord. And we're like, we want kind of like a first name to go with this. And so he named himself Alex the Language Lord. And so we play with Alex the
Okay.
Language Lord. That's why we call him
I
Alex.
was
And
kind of wondering why like everybody referred to the AI as Alex, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
this okay. This kind of brings some light to it.
yeah. So yeah, we let him name himself. Early on, we thought, whatever the AI says, we're going to do, right? And we
Right.
kind of wanted to see what that was like. And then we learned pretty fast that one of the most important things when you use AI in Dungeons and Dragons is you've got to reject bad ideas, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
use it
Right.
as a tool. And so often we'll say, no, I don't like that. Do that different, or make it funnier, or make it cooler, or make it whatever. So you give it instructions. So yeah, so we play with Alex the Language Lord. Episode one of the season is the character creation. Episode two, now we do a DM prep, or prep
Mm.
episode, we call it. We used to start the season with the prep episode, but we realized that so much of Dungeons and Dragons should be based around the characters that you're creating, right?
Hmm.
And so when I play D&D outside of the podcast, that session zero is so important, right? Seeing what people
It's unbelievably
want to
important.
play, right? Making sure you have a team that works well together, that everyone's on the same page as far as like, are we heroes? Are we villains? Are we scoundrels? Like, what are we doing, right?
Right.
And then I think from there, that's where the DM steps in and goes, oh, I've got a story for this group, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think often, as dungeon masters, we're like, oh, I've just invented an amazing world, and I want to force players into this world. And
Right.
I've learned from Adventure AI that the better way to go is create characters and then create a world for those characters instead of the other way around. So yeah, so that's episode 2, and then we do as many episodes as we need to actually play the one shot, and usually that's 1 to 3 episodes that we do, and then the last episode of the season is just a recap. What did we learn about playing D&D with AI, and what we liked about the campaign, what we hated about it, and so we just rinse and repeat and do that over and over.
Yeah, dude, it is so good. I liked what you said about having to learn almost like with the AI, because it became very apparent that there were certain ideas that you were rejecting. I'm going to refer to the AI as Alex from here on
Yeah, yeah,
out. It feels right, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and so you reject a few of Alex's ideas, especially when in the character creation. And I fully wholeheartedly agree. I think it only adds to the beauty of the show, having the character creation and the like, almost like that peek behind the DM screen.
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to podcasts or play D&D and stuff, depending on what your role is in the game, whether it be a player or a DM, there is a lot of information that you are left out on. And to enjoy such a unique play style such as this, it is so useful for like me as the listener to just really get the entirety of this one shot. And I think like both of those episodes hold such value, and really builds up like what you're about to get into as a one shot.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what
I think it's important. I don't think that's true for everybody, right? I think some people are just like, "Hey, I
Yeah.
want to be there for the adventure only." But those who really want to get better at playing D&D, I think need to have more time seeing how other people prep a session, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's such a, if you've never DM'd before and you're like, "How do I go about doing this?" And I don't think we take turns on who's DMing, and I DM part of the time, and my co-host does as well, and we've even had a guest DM before, and it's hard. DMing is just hard, and I think I'm great at it. And then I listen to the episodes, and I'm like, I'm the worst DM in the world. like this is awful. Like, why am I so bad at something that I think I'm good at?
Yeah.
But I think it's good to see what other people are doing and how they prep, and where energy can be put into prepping. So
Yeah, it's so good. It honestly, it's this has been an incredibly enjoyable like one shot. But I wanted to go back with Alex, and I really liked what you said, where you have to reject ideas. You're learning with the AI,
right, right.
and there is a moment during the character customization when you are having Alex come up with the ideas and the unique like backgrounds, and this, that, and the other thing. And we get to the point where Alex is basically almost verbatim retelling the story of Jack and Sally from Nightmare Before
Right, right,
Christmas.
right.
And I dude, Jason, I was laughing hysterically. I'm in the kitchen doing dishes. I got the headphones in. No one knows what I'm like
Right,
listening to.
right.
No one knows the context, and I am like a psychopath doing dishes and laughing out loud as you're asking Alex to give you a unique, like one of a kind background, and then like a couple sentences in, I'm like, oh, this is just Nightmare Before
I've heard
Christmas.
this
And
before. Yeah.
yeah, and everybody's like, well, hold on a minute, and then you get like the Gourd Lord, and it's like just like the slight details and names of things are shifting, but it's the Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, I gotta say, there's a moment that really broke me when they were talking about the background of the character, and it gets to this point where the Gourd Lord is going through the magical realm, basically all of Halloween and darkness and stuff, and then walks into a forest where there's a portal that goes into a land of jolly and stuff. And I'm just like, this is the movie. I'm like, has Alex watched this movie? Is just this like the first thing that Alex is thinking of? It was so brilliant and so great. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, but Alex has such I'm really enjoying the utility of the AI's ability to come up with um like different and new names for
Hmm.
certain things. Um, so like basically, obviously, everything was very holiday themed, Christmas themed, and stuff. But being able to change like the names for like Eldritch Blasts and like you know the weapon names and stuff. So where I guess I wanted to ask in the very beginning using AI, did you think that it was going to run this well? Like, were there any doubts that this just wasn't going to work out?
You know, we did we did a couple tests before we recorded, just getting on and seeing what it could do. We're not recording, but we're just having a conversation with the AI, trying to figure out, you know, if I did a one shot, and I think we even mentioned in the that season some point where the first thing I ever tried was write me a Christmas campaign, a one shot with a Christmas campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and it made a character for Tyler to play called Holly Jolly, which was like a Christmas elf, and she was fighting Yetis and Grinches and stuff like that, and I was going, wow, this is kind of a cool story it's coming up with, like it's going to work. And then I remember I like on my own, I was like, I wonder if I could just play D&D with AI, where I just, and so I typed in like, hey, will you play a game of Dungeons and Dragons with me and you be the dungeon master? And it's like, sure. And so
Mm-hmm.
it took me on a little adventure, but like we would take small steps of like the adventure was me sneaking into this camp of bandits or something, and I was going around and like taking them out one at a time. And then, you know, I say, hey, I want to attack this one, and then it does this response of like, you kill this person and then you wipe out the next 15 and then you take the treasure back to the king, and like it just like bypasses everything. It's like, okay, you can't really
Yeah.
play. And then I also had this like sense of like danger, like I could fail at anything, until I realized I wasn't failing at anything. And then
Mm-hmm.
I tried to start failing at stuff, and like it won't let you fail, right? Like it won't write a story
Yeah.
where you get hurt or you get stuff. And so it's not quite at the point where you can actually just play D&D with it and let it be the dungeon master. But as a tool, it is the greatest resource. And you mentioned like it's cool to see them come up with names and stuff. That is like surface level, the most basic thing it can do, and it can do a great job at it. But you've got to open your mind to like way bigger, like as a tool. I DM a bunch of groups right now. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I'm DMing a bunch of kids tonight, and then I'm DMing a different group tomorrow night. and
Hey,
and I
nice.
use AI as my like where I keep all my notes. So you go into ChatGTP, you start a thread. Each group that I DM for has its own thread, and everything's in there. And so I just type in like, hey, this is the campaign I'm thinking of. This is what I want to
Mm-hmm.
do in this session. This is where we're going. These are who the characters are. I feed it all this information, and then I say, write me a session outline, and it writes a whole outline for that session. And then I can go through and go, oh no, let's change this. No, this isn't what I'm
Right.
thinking here. And then it adjusts it. Or I could be like, hey, I need the characters to find a letter. Write the letter for me. The letter should have these things in it. And so it writes the letter for me and does that. And it's really cool how it can do stuff so fast. You can tell it to change things, and it adjusts on the fly. But it also does a pretty good job of remembering everything in that thread, right? And so
Yeah.
I can go back to that. So my notes are hard to scroll through, but if I can't find something, I can be like, hey, what was the name of that NPC that has the medallion, right? And then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just blurts out the whole stats for that NPC. And often, sometimes it does change names, and sometimes it does change stats and stuff. But you just roll with that. It's not that big of a deal. And then when I finish a session when I'm DMing, I'll go back and I'll report. I'll be like, this is how far we got in the session. This is what the characters did. This is what this player did. These are the players that stood out. And so now it has that information within the thread. And so as we plan future stuff, it can pull off of what actually happened versus what we planned. So
Yeah, it is an incredibly helpful and super unique tool, especially for DMs. There, one of our previous episodes, we had Richard on, and I had mentioned talking about like AI and stuff, and using AI as a DM is very new to me. But our guest Richard was like, "Oh, you mean my co-DM?" And I
yeah.
was like, "Oh, so I'm not the only one who's like, going about this." And so the last we spoke, I took your advice and I brought it into the D&D game, and it saved my ass.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot like we finished up what I had planned a lot earlier than I was expecting, and my party was ready to go to a town immediately. And so I was like, absolutely. And I'm struggling to find like all of my information and stuff. And so during our session break, we do like half a session, and we do like a 10-minute like go refill your drinks and like kind of get like a snack or something, and then we come back. So during this, I take the information that I had already pre-planned. I just went over to ChatGTP, and I pasted in there. I said, hey, using this information, I need a town, with this setting, with these, types of merchants, with this type of like currency and everything. And it came up with an entire town labeled, listed,
Yep.
organized, like names, items, stats with items. And I was like, oh, this is an absolute game changer.
Yeah.
And it was so brilliant. I even
Yeah.
threw
Your
in there.
players can't really throw you a curveball anymore. Right.
Yeah,
Because if you're like,
listen, it's
what do
awesome.
I do? Yeah. They're looting the bodies. What should be on these bodies? Give me some cool
Right.
items that can be on this. And yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah,
Um,
it's created a shopkeep with a slight attitude and a
yep.
whole lot of personality, and it has become one of like my party's like favorite shopkeeps to continue to interact with, and it has created a character that I'm really enjoying playing as an NPC. Like it is so it AI has completely changed the way that
Mm-hmm.
I'll be playing D&D from here on out, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, and we got to remember too, we're at like the baby level of what it's going to be. Like 5 years from now,
Oh
it's
man,
going to
yeah.
be insane what it can do, right? And I think it's going to get to the point. Well, I mean, you produce podcasts, you know the work and effort that goes into it. When we play Adventure AI, we're doing a little bit of smoke and mirrors. So you're not seeing what's actually going on because we edit a lot out, and so
Mm-hmm.
just to walk you through what it's actually like. We have a Discord open where all the players and the DM are communicating to each other via chat on the Discord. And
Okay.
during that time, so for character creation, because we want to make it feel live and going on, but AI is not to the point where I can say, "Hey, Alex, give me a magic weapon," and then all of a sudden a voice talks to me. That's not how it works. We have to actually like plug in information, and so if Tyler's DMing and it gets to my turn and I say, hey, I want a magic item for this character or a cool item, give me an item.
Mm-hmm.
Before it's even my turn, I go into the chat and type the question that I'm going to ask in like 30 seconds. And
Oh, I see.
I type it in a way that is friendly to the AI, right? So Jason's character, Santa Claus, wants a magic item to use in this campaign, right? Or whatever it is. And then
Mm-hmm.
when and so the DM and the other characters are working on their stuff. It gets to my turn, and Tyler will ask me a question, and I'll kind of vamp a little bit. I'll talk about the question. I'll stretch it out and talk a little bit longer, so that while I'm talking, Tyler's ignoring me. He goes to my question, he copies it, he pastes it into ChatGTP, he gets an answer, he takes that answer, he copies it into a text for speech, and then plays the response. And so sometimes that timing doesn't work out right, and so we got to like edit out gaps through it. But like it's hard. One of the players that was on there was like, I didn't realize like you can't really pay attention to what anybody else is doing, because you've got
Wow.
work that you're doing while you're doing it, and it's all live and going. And so we're cutting out bits and pieces of it, but it's an effort to get it done. Now, if you're at the table and it's just friends getting together, it's not a big deal to be like, oh, let's see what the AI comes up with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't think you also have to. I think it's foolish anytime that that DMs, like as a DM, I don't need to pretend that I'm smarter than I am, right? Like
Right,
I don't
right.
think I need to hide the fact from the players that I'm using AI, right? I like
Mm-hmm.
there's no like, hey, I don't want them to know I'm cheating, right? And so sometimes you want to just do it on the sly and do it fast, no big deal. And other times you can be public about it and be like, hey, let's what's the NPC's name? Oh, let's do this. Let's just make a shot for it. I'll do a little prompt and we'll get it, and then I'll read it to everyone and let them in on the experience. And it takes a little more time, and things are
Right.
as it goes around. And that's fine when you're at the table, but you don't want that during a podcast. You don't want like 30 seconds where we're just waiting, and then you pass on that 30 seconds of dead air time to your listeners and multiply it by how many downloads you get, right? You
Right.
want to take all that out. And so there is a little bit of effort that goes into cleaning up our episodes and making the experience more enjoyable for our audience.
Well, I will say everything you just said there, I would never have known. It is you guys clean that episode up, I guess, so well, and it flows. It almost feels like you said, like we're at the base level, like it's only going to get more I guess intricate as like time goes on, to the point where where it's probably going to react just like when we speak to our phones and call
Right.
Siri for help kind of thing. And the reaction time is going to be a lot faster. I used AI outside of the campaign to help me with the prep, being that like I don't know that my players are going to let's say like be in this town for a whole lot of time. So for me to spend a couple of hours planning and fleshing out an entire town for my players to like walk in and say, I'd like 6 potions, and then they move on, So I'm like, I have no problem whatsoever using the AI for like the names and like creating like basically like a layout with stats and whatnot there. Um, I am very much looking forward to using AI much more, in my game itself. But I am actually I will say I'm surprised to that, like the amount of planning that you all go into to set up like the AI, and then when you listen to it, it flows so well. It really does feel at moments that like just Alex is in the room and Alex is like,
Yeah,
yeah, man,
yeah,
I got you,
and
like
that's
no
what
brainer.
we want the audience to experience. But I think what is it called, like the critical role effect or something like that,
Oh yeah,
where people
yep,
people listen to all these like professional voice actors doing playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they're like, I want this experience. You can just have this,
yeah,
and you go home and you play with your friends, and it turns out that you all suck at voices and aren't very good at playing D&D,
yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, why doesn't this feel big and good? It's because, well, you've got professionals doing it at a professional
Mm-hmm.
level, and we're, I would say, like, we're semi-pro, because it's just the experience that we have of what we're doing, producing a show. But if you're expecting the same thing when you go home and play D&D to make it be like Adventure AI. You're like there are warts that we have cut out, right? That
Sure.
you'll experience in a live gameplay that you just won't hear on the show, right? And that's important, right? Like I do like
Oh,
I say, my
absolutely.
full-time job is film, and like Photoshop and touching up people and color correcting, and people look at like supermodels and all this stuff and have this expectation of like what they should look like, and they look in the mirror and they're fat and they're bald and they're whatever, and it's like it's not fair. Life isn't fair. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
of
because
course.
you're looking at an illusion of what life
Right.
actually is, right? And we just need to be honest about what's real and what's not real, and it's okay to polish things up for entertainment, but don't expect that to be reality, and don't hold yourself to a standard that doesn't even actually exist. So
No, I wholeheartedly agree, and that's actually funny you say that, because that was kind of my vision for this podcast, was that everything is so edited, which isn't a bad thing at all. I think that for the concept of this show is talking to gamers under the gaming umbrella. Why we love gaming,
mm-hmm.
whether it be a TTRPG or a video game or a board game or whatever. And I think some of the best conversations come from just a raw conversation. And so when I edit things in the podcast, it is like to make sure that the introduction music is there, the outro music is there, and that if anything like weird were to happen like during the episode, like I think one episode, like a couple episodes back, I think like one of my kids walked in. I'm like, well, I just
Yeah,
cut that
you want to
out,
clean
like no
that
big
out.
deal, right? But other than that, it is very straightforward, and it is like as the viewers listen to this episode, this is exactly as the episode is going on, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, and I think it's appropriate for some episode or some podcasts to lean into that actual, hey, this is what the experience
Yep.
was. We're leaving all the warts in. We're gonna let it play how it played, because we want that real feeling of
Mm-hmm.
like two people actually having a conversation. And then
Right.
it's okay for stuff to be highly produced, and hey, we're gonna clean it up. And when I say highly produced too, our show isn't highly produced, right? We don't have the budget, we don't have the funding, we don't have,
Right.
so it's a little more edited is all it really is. I would
Yeah.
love to be at a point where we had a full team doing the post production, that we were getting sound effects in, that we're really cleaning up everything that we wanted to in the show, that we had a more polished intro and outro and
Right.
music throughout and stuff. But we've invested thousands of dollars into getting our equipment and getting started and putting things in, and so far we've made $0 on the podcast that we do, right? And so
Had to
it's
think about that.
yeah, I had to do the math real
I was
quick.
like, hang on a
it's
minute. Let me
it's
do that.
still
That's
nothing. It's
still
still nothing
nothing.
at
Great.
all.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
But
yeah.
we
No,
did
I'm
talk
I'm
to
there.
we did talk to a cool company that does AI stuff with D&D about sponsoring our show. And they're like, yeah,
Nice.
let's do that. So we're gonna have a sponsor coming up on a future episode. We're gonna use some of their tools. We don't have enough downloads yet to actually be charging the sponsor, but the sponsor is going to
Mm-hmm.
be giving us access to their products for free and giving us credits on it.
Oh,
And so
dude, that's awesome.
eventually, yeah, I mean, it's a start, right? It's just
Yeah.
moving in the right direction to do that. And like I love that there are companies out there, and I'm sure this company that's sponsoring us is a small company as well. They don't have infinite. There's not like this big billion-dollar company that could
Yeah.
throw money anywhere, but they're also starting out, and they
Right.
decided, hey, with AI, I want to do something cool with AI and D&D and build a tool for people. And I'm like, I want to support that, right?
Yeah.
I
Of
want I
course.
want that company to succeed. I want our podcast to succeed. Let's make some partnerships and let's do it. So I'm excited to see where we could go with the podcast there as well. So
Well, for starters, congratulations. That's
oh,
huge.
thanks, man. Thanks.
That is super awesome. Yeah, and even if it's not like it's a big thing, I think I often tell people a lot. Oddly enough. I don't feel like this show is like intimidating, like the Who What Now gaming show. Um, but there are some guests who I'm still trying to to coax to come on the show and stuff, and some people find it kind of like intimidating, and I'm like, oh no, it's just me in a
Yeah.
room by myself with a camera and equipment and stuff, and like we're just having a conversation. But I wanted to kind of backtrack just a little bit. You said, the critical role, effect. And I think you brought up an excellent point that I think sometimes people seem to overlook because entertainment is truly entertaining.
Hmm.
And so when you say, it's not a high production value or a high production,
A highly
effort,
produced show.
kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, right. Uh, Neither is this. I'm sitting in a Target desk chair that I just happened to get because my other one broke. Like we're not putting a whole lot of effort into it's what I feel like the conversations
But
that
you've got a
bring the
cool
true value.
purplish bluish light behind you, which goes a long way.
Oh,
So,
let me tell you about my discounted Christmas floodlights that I got because it's the middle of the summer,
yes.
and I was like, well, this will be perfect, um, but Critical Role is they're all voice actors.
Hmm.
They all put forth the Matt Mercer, all things aside, is an incredible just person. Voice acting, DMing, whatever ideas, like the guy is incredible. But that being said, there is a lot of background work that goes in to make the show work
Hmm.
perfectly. But they also have a huge team that works on these things. There is a huge set, there's a budget, there's a this, that, and the other thing. I mean, I think at one point he does like a little tour of one of the the like his prep rooms, and it's just filled with drawers filled with like painted minis and stuff. So I'm
Hmm.
like, you have like there's the show itself may seem simple and fun where everybody's sitting around a table, but like there is a huge production team behind this. So when you watch these and you're like, I want the Critical Role experience, and then you go home and everybody's sitting there with like number two pencils and they're like sheets that they printed off the internet, and the one guy's got just the handbook, and he's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You hear a bear in the woods, and everybody's like, this
Yeah.
doesn't feel right, and you're like, yeah, because like you're not a trained actor, and you're
Hmm.
you're like, but when it all comes down to it is that, are you sitting around the table because you're looking for a Critical Role experience, or are you sitting around the table because you're like, hey, I have this super either amazing, nutty, stupid, funny idea for a campaign, and I just want to see what happens and I want to enjoy it with my friends. And I think that is where the true value of what I see Adventure AI going with. I see with the D&D games that I participate in and that I DM for, and it truly is just that magical moment, and which I almost kind of want to use as a transition, because I do have, or I've been very curious since the last time we spoke, when it comes to what you do as a career and as a living. Uh, what, if any, do you take from your like life experience in the industries into like doing a podcast or doing the show, or even I mean even the other show with mulling it over? Like, what experiences have kind of like have you placed into this that have you kind of put your own touch on it, your own unique style, I guess?
Yeah. So I think for me, I love story, right? Story is king. And I've studied story my entire career. I love the 3 act structure. I love setups and payoffs and all that stuff. My other podcast, Mulling It Over with Brandon Mole, where Brandon and I talk about and for those of you who don't know Brandon, he's a New York Times bestselling author. He did
Mm-hmm.
author. He did Fablehaven, Candy Shop War, Beyonders, Five Kingdoms. He has a bunch of series, Dragon Watch that he's done. So we talk story together. And when I just hang out with Brandon in real life, that's what we're doing, right? We're
Yeah,
we're
of
we're
course.
talking about ideas and doing stuff. And so we're like, we should do a show about this and just focus on story and creating story and doing that. Brandon has me read his books before he publishes them, right? And so
Hey,
as I
nice.
read his stories, I'm looking for setups and payoffs the whole time, right?
Okay.
What did he set up in chapter 1 that could be paid off later? I am projecting as I'm reading it, this is how I think the book should end, right? And
Mm,
then when it doesn't end that way, I ask, why didn't it end that way? What did he set up early on that he didn't pay off that led me to think it was going to get paid off this way? And can he still pay off those things, right, that he set up unintentionally?
right,
And so
right.
so I work with him on that stuff, and he's got an amazing mind. He doesn't need my help, right? He can do stuff, but I have given him characters that he's used and loved. I often am encouraging him to kill characters in his book and do that, and he has done a few. I always get real proud when I kill one of his characters in his book, where he's like, oh yeah, that would be a good moment for a death, and we could do that. But it's fun to be able to bring that to the table. So when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I am always thinking about story, right? I'm thinking about the hero's journey. Where do these characters start? Where are they going? What is that threshold that they
Mm-hmm.
need to cross, where once they've crossed that, they can never return as the same person again, right? They have to be able to, once they've crossed that threshold, they have to fundamentally change before they can ever come home again. And I want my players to have that experience where it's like, okay, I went somewhere. My character has changed.
Right.
I'm a different person. It's hard to experience that in a one shot, right? In a one shot, for these small campaigns that we do for the podcast, we've got to be thinking like, what's the setup, what's the central conflict, and then the return as well. But you're not. It's just such a small story that we're telling, that you're not going to have as big of a change or an experience. And so, but yeah, that's what I probably bring to everything that I do is, what is the story that we're actually telling? What's the most important moment? Whose turn is it to shine, right? Whose moment is it?
Right,
When you watch
right.
a film, that's a good question to ask, because most of the time, every scene you're in is the protagonist's scene, but every now and then the scene belongs to another character, and it's
Yeah.
that character's turn to grow. And if you think you're just there for the protagonist, you're going to miss these moments in film and in other storytelling where the side characters have a moment of growth and can
Mm-hmm.
experience something beyond what the story arc for the protagonist is. Does that make
Yeah,
sense,
dude.
or is that just fluff?
Oh no, that was. I honestly, I had to try to correct myself here because I like to try to like look into the camera every so often. But I
I like
enjoyed
the eye
everything that you
contact.
just said. Yeah, everything you just said here. I'm just like I'm zoned in right here on my computer, and then I was like, oh shit, camera. And then but that's incredible. I mean, the first thing I thought of was great. Now when my favorite character, or the character that I really enjoyed, died, I know exactly who to blame.
Yeah, who to blame?
But
here's
um,
here's the thing. This is what I had a conversation with Brandon a long time ago, and I had a really dark take on books, which is, when you finish a book, all of the
yes.
characters are dead anyway, right? They no longer exist. And
Okay.
so you might as well get the pain that comes with a character death on the page, rather than the happily ever after where they die on their own eventually, right? And
Right.
so there are moments. Now that's not universally true, and people, I've shared that before, and there are flaws to that argument that are obvious and true as well. But if you're never going to return to a character again,
Mm-hmm.
is there a moment where their death can mean something? right?
Right.
That's important for the character to die. My son and I, my son's an author. He just graduated from college. He's working on his first book. It's an awesome
Hey,
book.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm really proud of him. He's part of the LGBTQ community, which I love and support. And his
Absolutely.
protagonist is trans, and we were
Awesome.
working on this story together. It actually, I pitched him this idea based off of a D&D campaign that I came up with, and he loved the idea, and we altered it, and he's like, I think our lead should be, our protagonist should be trans in this. And I was like, help me understand why, like I don't think we should have a trans character for the sake of having a trans character, right?
Right.
It has to mean something. But like, you're the author, I'll let you kind of do this. And we worked through the story for a long time. We got to the climax of the book, and what I had built for my D&D campaign for the climax was this great moment that kind of fell apart
Yeah.
in the novel. It just wasn't working, and so we took months just negotiating that climax. How do we make the
Mm-hmm.
climax work? And you know you're on the right track when you solve something, and then everything just clicks into place before and after
Yeah.
the climax. And once we found that little key in there, which happened to hinge upon the protagonist being trans, everything in the book just fell in place. And and the weakest part of our book, which was the climax, became the strength of the book, right? I don't know why I told you the story of that book, other than the fact that when we were working on it,
I love it.
we had a character that when we talked about this character, I was like, this this character does need to die
Yeah.
in the book, not the protagonist or anyone, but a
Yeah,
character
yeah, of
that
course.
we came up with. And um and he fought that until we found that right moment. And now when this character dies, even though I know the character is going to die, like, I it's hard for me not to cry when this
Yeah.
character that you've grown to love and experience
Yes.
and see passes away in this book. It's just a great moment that you don't want to cheat your audiences of, right? And
Yes.
so,
I've 100% had like games that I've so unbelievably enjoyed and care so deeply for, like the story and the lore and everything. And then like a character may die or leave the game, or something will happen and I feel it internally,
mhm.
like very very deeply. I don't know if you familiar with a game that just came out over like the last year or so, called Baldur's Gate 3.
I haven't played it,
Okay,
but I am
well, do
familiar with
yourself a
it.
favor. It
I
is
know, I
so good.
know, I know. It's great. I don't play a lot of games. I play the Zelda games, and
Love it.
back in the day, I'm a bit older than you, so I was on the original NES, and Super Mario Brothers and
Hey, I was
Zelda
there
and
too.
Metroid. Like,
Yep.
those were my thing back in the day. I put it down, and now, like I said, I played the Zelda games. I really wanted to get into Baldur's Gate 3. I know for sure that it would eat up so much of my life that
It does. Yeah.
that I can't justify it. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to do it. I will say this: I listened to your episode on Baldur's Gate 3, and which was awesome. Except for, I know spoilers are coming. I know you're going to do another one. So
I was actually just going to say, do not listen to this week's episode then.
yeah,
Normally, that's not something I would tell my
I
audience, but
know.
if you don't want spoilers, we are going over Act 2 and the end of the game. And
Yeah,
if you have plans on playing the game, I'm almost suggesting that this be the lowest rated, like, viewed, episode. It's not something I would want for, the show, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it's I love the game so much, but there are a few characters in there that I got so attached to because the story is so well written that when the conclusion of the game came to an end, it I almost I put the controller down. I had a tear in my eye. I'm not gonna lie. Like
yeah.
my heart was full. I felt like I needed to take a step back, and I just had to like soak it all in. It was it meant so much to me as a consumer of the game, but as someone who loves and cares so deeply for a strong story and a tale, that I it's and I think that's what we all strive to do as a DM or as a player, as a D&D player, as a video game lover, as a book lover. Like we are all here for the story, and to be able to, especially in like D&D or in any like tabletop RPGs, to collectively be able to tell a an eventful, moving story is probably the most valuable thing that you're going to have through those experiences. And so I have had multiple times where like I say this to everybody in when I DM in session 0. I said I have one goal through this entire process of the entire campaign, however it could be 6 months, 2 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter. My goal by the end of our campaign is I'm going to break one of you and I'm going to make one of you cry, because I want the emotion. I want to know
Mm-hmm.
that what I have created and what we have collectively told together meant something to you.
Right.
And that I would, if I were to ever create something and it maybe got, I don't know, 7 views, but one person said this truly hit me and it truly meant something to me, I feel amazing. That is the reward in itself to me, because it tells me that I what I cared about and what I put my my effort and my heart into paid off. Like it told an amazing story,
Yeah,
and I would
you're
even
absolutely right. I don't think there's a better feeling as a DM than to
than making your
see
players cry.
your yeah, well no, just and that's part of it, but to see that engagement, right? Where
Yes,
your players are fully invested in the story that they're helping to tell, right?
yes,
That they're in it. And it doesn't have to be a cry, although I think crying is the greatest of emotions, but
I agree.
like a laugh, a scare, a holding a breath, finding like that their body is so tense, and then they have to like build that release. And I it reminds me like, have you ever been to the dentist and like they're doing stuff on you and your body's all tense, you're like, just relax, and then
Yeah,
like you don't remember tensing up again, then you're like, oh,
yeah,
just and you don't feel yourself tense, but you got to tell yourself to untense, and to have
yeah.
your players go through those experiences. I had this great campaign I did, or session I did 2 weeks ago with some friends. We're doing it tomorrow night again, and I had this NPC that they were traveling with, which was a knoll that was it's a circus campaign, and so they're traveling with a circus. And the gnolls in the circus are the clowns. They're like these crazy
Okay,
laughing hyena things, and there's a couple rules to spend time with these clowns. The
right.
first rule is you have to be the alpha. If you're engaging with one of the clowns and they don't know that you're in charge, they're going to eat you, right? And so you just
Nice.
whether you're the alpha or not, you have to act like the alpha.
Right.
And I had some introverted players in the game, and they didn't want to be the alpha. And so one of the girls I was playing with is like, I'm the alpha. Like she stepped up into that role, and when she didn't know what to do, she was confident with everything, right? And
Good.
was asking for help without asking for help, right? And taking charge, because she was committed to this alpha role, because I made it clear that these gnolls are very dangerous. They'll turn on you in a second, and you just have to be the alpha. The other rule is like they can't ever outnumber you. If there's two of you and three of
Right,
them,
right, right.
you're toast. But they're just traveling with the one, and the whole time, this party of like, and sometimes I DM for very large groups. This group is like 7 or 8 players, and so 7 or 8 players they were all terrified of this knoll that they're traveling with, and you could see the fear and tension in some of their
Right.
faces, just dealing with this crazy clownish knoll that they were doing. So yeah, so creating any sort of emotion where they're invested into the game like that, it just feels so rewarding as a player or as a DM.
Well, I'll tell you what was I wholeheartedly completely agree. Before I get into this next question, I have to ask, what's the largest group that you have ever DM'd for?
17 is my largest at the San Diego
What?
Comic Con. So
Oh, okay, all right.
so I traveled down. I used to travel every year to the Comic Con, and
Sure.
we would play. Had the group that I'd travel with. It's weird. We had a van full of guys that we'd drive down with, and I would DM on the drive down in the van
Nice.
while I was
Love
driving,
it.
right? And so I was driving, I was DMing. We're all playing in the car because we're trapped in here for it's like a 10-hour drive from
Right,
Salt
right,
Lake
right.
or whatever. So we're going down. We're just playing Dungeons and Dragons. I had started this campaign with this group, and then I had another group that I had started the same campaign with. Like it was like 4 years of playing with these two different groups, and it just so happened that we were all going to be at the San Diego Comic Con together. And so I was like, let's finish this campaign with two parties and two groups in the same world that have never met each other, all going after the same goal with this thing. So we sat in a room with 17 of us and we played this enormous climax to this pirate campaign that we were doing, and it was just thrilling and fun. But when you play with a big group, you can't do it has to be theater of the mind. You can't do maps. You've got to be um, oh, what's the word? You just have to take you got to move things along fast, right? You got
Yeah,
combat
yeah.
has to be fast. You've got to turn order can't be role based. You have to start and go around the room and go in because there's no way you can linear, like pick who's going next and look that up. So like you're next, you're next, you're next,
Right,
you're next,
right.
go around. Because at a certain point, it doesn't matter. And people are taking cinematic turns, right? They're not taking um like, oh, I'm gonna attack they describe what they want to do during this adventure, and we do it like
Of
that.
course.
So anyway, yeah, 17 is the biggest I've done, and it was one of the best D&D nights that I've had. On the flip side of that,
Well, congratulations,
oh,
because
thank
I
you.
do not know if I could do that. That is so many characters and
So
so
yeah,
many
it's
minds.
yeah, it's fun. I love playing in big groups, but I also the first time I played Dungeons and Dragons, I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I was in San Diego. I was on a field trip with my best friend who was a DM at a DM. We're like 6 and 7, right? We're
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kids,
like
right?
DM.
But but we played Dungeons and Dragons on the bus ride on a field trip from our school down to SeaWorld. We played for like that hour and a half bus ride that we were on, and he had engaged me so much in this story that he was telling. I still remember being in this dungeon, and we had that the red box picture, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
image of the barbarian fighting the red dragon, and we just basically recreated that scene and that moment, and we played that out. And I remember jumping on the dragon's neck and stabbing it and doing all this stuff, and ever since that day, I've been chasing that moment again, right? And I bring that up because I am highly interested in D&D with a single player, right? Where a DM
Interesting.
and a player that just the two of them tell a
Right.
story together. I still play D&D with this friend of mine, and we were on in an online campaign, and we needed to do a solo session. And I remember and so we decided to meet up on a Saturday. He still is in California. I'm in Utah, so we're doing it over the phone. And I was walking through my neighborhood because I needed to get somewhere. So I was on a walk, he was on the phone with me, and we were playing Dungeons and Dragons as I was walking down the street. And I was like, this is like the bus ride we had, 40 years ago when we were doing this. And I'm still as engaged in his stories and what we're doing. And in the adventure that we were playing later, my character was captured and being interrogated, and I was going through an interrogation as I was walking through my neighborhood and doing
Right.
this. And I was like, D&D can be a solo adventure
Oh,
and
100%.
still be thrilling, and so yeah, so I'm all for super huge parties. I'm for very small parties in general. My personality is always everybody's invited, right? And so
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
if I'm a DM and I've got a party of 7 players and somebody's like, hey, can so and so play with us? They're invited. If you want to bring an 8th player, we can do it. I understand that D&D is for 3 to 5 players and
Right.
whatever. Ideally, a party of 4, but yeah, you can go as big or as small as you want. Don't let the party size prevent you from playing.
Absolutely. I love that so much. I wholeheartedly agree. Actually, the my buddy who initially like kind of like we got into D&D together. And he was my first DM, and ever since this moment, I remember, we didn't know how to kick things off. So he bought the player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and then he bought himself a set of dice, and he bought me a set of dice. And I'm trying to get my camera, and I've been arguing all week. Um, but so my first set of dice was bought for me by my buddy. So from that point on, anytime I had ever reached out and said like, hey, if you need a DM, I'll be your DM. Or like someone's like, oh, I'd love to play, but I don't have a group or something. I'm like, hey, come on in. So what I ended up doing is a couple years ago, I went and I bought like I think it was like 180 sets of dice, right
Nice.
offline. Showed up, big box. I took opened everything up, dumped them all in these bags, and now I have one big bag that has every section, set for all these dice. So
Mm-hmm.
I bought just an insane amount of dice, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, Josh, you're the dice goblin." I'm like, "Yeah, 100%. I love my dice." But the point that I did that for was that when I have these conversations about why D&D is so good, and people say, I don't have a group, I don't have this, I don't have that, I say, hey, let me show you what my version of D&D is like. Let me be your introduction into D&D, and then when we get together, my gift to you is here's the bag. Create your set of dice. Go through here, find what you like, what speaks to you, match them, mix and match them, do whatever you want. But my gift to you is the story out of my brain and your first set of dice. And that is what I will hold from here on out, no matter what, when I play D&D. And it's like it's because in the very beginning, you want to play, you don't have a group, you may not have supplies, you don't even know if it's 100%
Mm-hmm.
for you yet. So let my example, my introduction to this, be like your good first introduction,
Yeah,
and
that's
and it's
beautiful.
that's
That's
what I'm all
such an
about.
awesome thing. I've done that on a smaller scale. I used to give first time players just a D20 and do
It's
that. But a
such a
full
good dice.
it's such a cool thing to do. It's so
It
cool that
is.
you
It's
do
so
that.
good.
Like it's awesome. And like it seems selfless, right? But what are you getting out of it?
Bingo.
Tell me the joy that you're feeling when they're going in there and they feel special, they feel loved, they feel seen, they feel like, hey, I get to be a part of this group, and you sit back and you can go, I did that, right? Like I
That, and I
did
get the
that for
excuse to
somebody
play
else.
D&D.
And you get somebody else to play with too, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Like
100%.
it's such a cool thing. Yeah, it's awesome. I love that story. I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Hey,
Yeah.
so I got one last question before we fully wrap up here, and I think this one really will go out to, I know, like a lot of players that I've played with, players that I have, questions that have been asked to me before in relation to Dungeons and Dragons and playing like TTRPGs. But in the Christmas special, which I highly suggest, seriously, like truly, truly, and honestly, if there's anything that anybody will ever listen to me say, go check out season 6, episode 1, and just give it that like season, and then come back to me and look me in the eyes, and I want you to, with a straight face, tell me I'm wrong. Okay, so go. I want from a one of the biggest triggers and of nervousness that players have when playing Dungeons and Dragons is role playing. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't ever tell anybody that you have to role play, but the reason I bring up that one shot is your full-fledged commitment to being Santa Claus. And I'm not gonna make you, but I would ask dearly if we could get the Santa Claus ho ho ho. But I really really want to know like where your first off your commitment to that character, and then the voice and getting into that RP. What would you say to those who maybe are a little nervous or don't know, like, hey, I don't want to feel dumb, or I don't want to sound like an idiot, or whatever, and like knowing that yes, we're among friends, but like what would you say is the advice to break that ice, to get them to feel like, hey, it doesn't matter what I sound like, we're all just having fun?
Yeah, it's scary, right? So I before Adventure AI, I didn't do a ton of voices as I DM'd or as I played, right? But when we started Adventure AI, I remember driving to the first adventure where I would have to play a character who had a voice, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Am I going to do this? Am I gonna am I gonna do this voice? What if it comes off dumb? What if it's stupid? What if people hate it? What if
Yep.
and it's scary, right? Because you're performing. And not only are you performing, but you're putting it out there online for other
Yes.
people to consume and to make fun of and do. And so it's intimidating. One of the things that I would recommend if you want to do a voice, practice your voice as you're driving by yourself, right?
Yeah,
Just
100%.
get alone, get in your car as you're driving to work, as you're driving home, just start having a conversation as that character, right? Just talk to yourself as that character. Find out come up with catchphrases that character
Mhm.
would say. Say it over and over and over again. I was working with an actor one time, and we were doing a language show where we were teaching people how to speak in different languages and whatnot, and it was supposed to feel like an old radio show. And
Oh, I love that.
this character, he was a Hispanic actor, and he was doing this voice. And we recorded for like a full week this thing, and every day he would have to get back into character, and sometimes it's hard. Like if you're in the moment and the character's going, first of all, the character will evolve a little bit as you first discovering the voice, and so
Sure. Yeah,
the
oh,
beginning of
always.
of any voice is going to change until it like lands on something, and then you're like, okay, this is the character here. But then how do you get back to that character?
Right.
And I remember the character that this actor was playing. His name was Pepe, was the name of the character. And
Okay.
to get into character, he would recite this thing. He'd be like, "Pepe's up here. Pepe's up here. Pepe's up. Okay, now I'm Pepe." And right, and so he would go through that motion, and he would say a couple things, and but it always started with Pepe's up here. That was his like, okay, now I'm in the voice, and now I can do and I'm not doing Pepe's
Right.
voice, I'm just doing whatever. But he would get into that voice, and then he would say a few things, and then we would start recording with him, and he would be able to be in that voice. And when he found himself losing that voice, he would go back to that Pepe's up here, and he'd create that
Right.
that little thing to get in there. And so you've got to just commit to it, right? And so it just so happens that Santa Claus is one of my all-time favorite characters in any genre, anywhere. You put Santa Claus in it,
Okay.
I'm in love. I love everything about Santa. I like Santa in like, I don't know. Have you ever read the graphic novel like Fables, or even the Dresden Files? Right there's these worlds where you're not expecting Santa Claus to be in there, and then he shows up, and you're like, well, of course Santa would be in here, and of course he's the coolest guy in this whole thing, right? Because he's freaking Santa Claus, right? And
Right.
so and it happened as well that for a that morning I played Santa Claus for a bunch of kids, and I have an
Nice.
unbelievable Santa costume as well. I have this like steampunk Santa costume that I made
Nice.
that's incredible, and it's just really cool. And so I had been playing Santa Claus all day that day. And so when we came into that session where I was Santa Claus, it was so easy to get into the ho ho ho, Merry Christmas, boys and girls. We're gonna play Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm excited to cast spells and do all sorts of crazy things for you today, right? And so it was like this like
Hey, there it is.
crazy Santa Claus that I came to
Yeah.
play. And one of the coolest things that I felt like I did in that adventure was, I was like, every time Santa casts a spell, I want him to have some sort of incantation that he's saying, right? Something where it's words of magic that is coming
Yes.
out of him in his
Yeah.
voice. So I had, and it was obvious, I had Alex, I was like, hey, I'm going to cast the spell Spirit Guardians. What would
Right.
Santa Claus say to cast Spirit Guardians? And you got to give Alex, or the AI, rules to follow, right? And
Right.
so
Right. Right.
it would be stuff like, you have to include the name of the spell in the spell, right? And whatever, and it has to feel Christmas themed, or whatever prompts I give. And then it did it, and then it would be like, by the power of holiday joy, I cast fireball, and
Right.
whatever it is, and I'm just reading this stuff. But then it got to the point where, like, I could stretch it and add things in there as
Right.
the character and stuff. I also really believe in the principle of being in the zone, right?
Yes.
Where here's something that I struggle with, which is, I'm dyslexic. I have synesthesia, which means I associate different things to letters than actually sounds and stuff. So they all
Oh,
have
cool.
colors with it, which
Yes.
means reading is very difficult for me. I'm a
Yes.
very poor reader. I was illiterate till I was 15 years old, and now I am very self-conscious of my reading.
Yes.
And you put me in a room where I'm performing in front of people, and I have to read a spell on the fly, in character, without messing up the things like that. That's an intimidation level that I'm
Yeah.
not comfortable with. But when you're in the zone, you can do anything, right? And so creating an environment where you can get into the zone and do stuff, and then all those fears go away, and then you just become what you're supposed to become. Like, I felt like I hit that moment in the Christmas adventure that we went on. So
Yeah. That was excellent. I wholeheartedly agree. I definitely can relate. I have raging ADHD, and I also am super super dyslexic, and so like reading, especially out loud, there's like a lot of like self consciousness going on, and it was kind of funny because I didn't think of it like all the way through. But when I started streaming, I stream on Twitch. One of the things that I do is I read the comments out loud.
mm-hmm.
And then, like an idiot, I didn't put two and two together. And so then everybody's just like, hey, are you good? And I'm like, I gotta be honest, I can't read. All right, like it's like
Yeah.
it's like and but like my like superpower with it is that I make it a joke.
Mm-hmm.
I have fun with it. I enjoy it. I admit to it, and that kind of like that pulls away from feeling super super self conscious about it.
Yeah.
But I do the same thing when I do voices. in all of my in my campaigns and stuff. And so I enjoy having the goofy thing sometimes, especially if I'm feeling super iffy about a voice or so. I had a BBEG. For those listening don't know what that is, it's a big bad evil guy. It's your boss, right? I had a boss character who was extremely menacing, spoke very, soft but still menacing, and had this, this, that, and the other thing. But in this, he had a slight lisp. So it didn't matter what, I would sound like, or as like I'm trying to get the confidence, he would look down and, he'd say, if you were going to run through the river Styx, then you'll never get. And then so they're like listening to this guy, and they're like, hang on, what did he say? And you're like, what's wrong with that? And so
What's
you're like,
wrong?
oh, this is, yeah, you're like, this is a massive, like, super strong, like, oh, we would absolutely get wrecked if we tried to fight him. But then you're like, hang on a minute, what? And it becomes almost less menacing, but
Mm-hmm.
it pulls the tension off of me not like slipping up on what I'm doing, but also being able to be confident in what I'm doing. And I think everything that you explained right there, it was that's brilliant, and
Yeah.
I loved everything about it. It was fantastic. Um,
Yeah, it's smart to have a character that has a distinguishing feature, right? And that can be a lisp, it can be anything. Think of the that orc in Lord of the Rings that had
yes.
the thing, like he was not the he wasn't physically intimidating, right? Because he had
Mm-hmm.
these physical limitations, but he was memorable, right?
Yes.
He was something that stuck in your mind because orcs, not to be racist, but can you tell one orc from another, right? So like, but Peter Jackson wanted an orc that stood out from all the other
Yes.
orcs, right? And so he created this one that was different and unique, and he didn't do it in a way a 5-year-old would do it, by making him the biggest and the strongest and the coolest and whatever, right? He did do that in the Hobbit one with the orcs,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
but when he had restraint in Lord of the Rings, he made a really cool and engaging character. And
Yeah.
that's the
It
same
made
thing with
the
having this lisp that you do. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
It's like making the confidence of that character stands out more than the like appearance or the
Mm-hmm.
strength or the, like what have you of that character. That's what creates the memorable, characters.
Yeah.
I have a character that constantly comes back in all of my campaigns, whether it be a super small role, insignificant, or, incredibly, drawn to or tying to be like a key to the entire campaign. But they're a duo that run together. They're always goofy, but they're very like sassy but smart, but also they're kind of all over the place. He's a little goblin named Swimble, and his little rat friend named Chuck. And Chuck is an awoken rat who
Mm-hmm.
basically has accepted that his existence was basically only created so that somebody could talk to him, and after that, they let him go, and so now he's just this self conscious and self aware rat whose only purpose in life was to answer an adventuring party's question, and now has to
And
live
now he's
the
just
rest
on
of
his
his
own.
existence. Yeah, it has to
Yeah.
live
And
like the rest of his
can't be
existence.
among his people because he's too
Right.
smart
He's too
for
smart.
his people. And yeah.
And then he gets shunned away from everything else
Yeah.
because he's just
What
a
a
talking
curse,
rat.
because he's just
So
a
he
rat.
Right, and so he hangs out with a goblin who left the goblin camp. Didn't agree with what was going on. So Swimble the goblin and Chuck the rat are their own little duo, and they're
Love
self
it.
wandering adventures, like little adventure guys. And so every campaign that I have, they make an appearance, they pop up, they enjoy themselves. Chuck is always just like he's almost like always super bored with everything you have to say because he knows that his existence doesn't actually play a role in what the adventurers are going to do. So he's always like, yeah, whatever, if you have a snack, I'll answer your questions, kind of thing. And then Swimble is always just like, yeah, well, I mean, I've always, I'll do it if you need me to, kind of thing. And Chuck's always got to correct him and stuff. And so it's this fun little dynamic that I loved so much in one of my first campaigns that I just bring it back every single time. And it's such an icebreaker for, when I'm starting a new campaign with new players, because they're a duo that I'm so confident with and that I
Mm-hmm.
love so much. I know that I can break the ice of the game with them.
Those characters remind me of that Batman villain, the ventriloquist. What I don't know the actual name of it,
Oh,
but
I,
the
I
the
don't, I
puppet
don't,
mob
yeah,
boss guy and
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So all my
Um,
Batman friends are not gonna be a fan of me not knowing his name. So apologize for that.
that is fantastic. Hey, thank you so much,
Yeah,
like
of course,
so
man.
incredibly much for being here today. This was a treat, and I would love to set something up with you at some point to do this again. This was truly amazing. I love picking your brain about all this.
Yeah, I'd love to
Um,
anytime.
at the end of the show, I always leave this open to the guests to plug anything and everything, something you're working on, something you have worked on, something you would like to put out there. It could be anything from a favorite TV show or a meal you had yesterday.
All right.
What The floor is open, and
So
everything that we talk about will be linked at the bottom of this episode.
perfect. The things that I'm passionate right now are the two podcasts that I'm hosting, which is Adventure AI that we talked about, and Mulling It Over with Brandon Mull. I'd love for your listeners, if you want to see what we're doing there, come listen to the shows, engage with them, and and hopefully you enjoy it. And I'd love any feedback that you have. If you hate the shows, I would encourage you to subscribe, give it 5 stars, and then listen to it on mute. That's what I say. Just do that,
That's
and
brilliant. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. That's all I need from you. So
Where can we find those episodes or the podcasts? Are they?
So I'll give you links to those, but they're on all the
Yeah,
streaming
please do.
platforms, so you can find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else. One thing in life, when you have a business partner, you want to have a business partner that has compatible but not overlapping skills. And so Tyler Crump, my co-host and co-owner of these podcast, he is on the technical side of things, right? So he builds our websites, he does the hosting, he does all of that stuff. Every time I'm like, hey, I need to share a link with someone, can you send me a link? And he's like rolling his eyes. He's like, learn how to
Yep.
use a computer. And
Boy, do I
so
know that.
yeah,
Shout out
so
Noah. How you doing? We know
yeah,
you're listening.
yeah. So but yeah, so yeah, take a listen to our shows. We'd love to have you guys there. And Josh, keep on killing it with your podcast, man. I think it's great. I love what you're doing. Here's
Thank
a
you.
good sign that you have a good show. I've listened to all your episodes. I've listened to games that I have no interest in playing,
Thank
and
you so much.
still enjoy the content that you're providing. And so it's really cool to be like, okay, this is a world that I'm not super familiar with. When you get into the D&D stuff, I'm like, I could listen to these all day long. Like I'm home here. But when you're talking about Mass Effect or other things, like I'm like, I'll probably never play these games, right? And then when
Yeah.
spoilers come up in those games, I'm like, bring it to me, because this is as close as I'm going to get to playing these games.
Yeah, to
Um,
experiencing the games, right?
yeah, but like you said, that the way you structure your show, where it's just a couple guys talking, or guys and gals talking, and and just having a real conversation, it's engaging, it's cool. Keep it up. Keep up on believing in yourself and doing what you're doing, because you're doing a great job.
Dude, thank you so much. I
Yeah.
I am so appreciative of you, that to have you on the show, to hear those fantastic words. It's I don't know what to say. So
Hey,
I I, I
let's say this.
appreciate it.
Let's become friends in real life and play D&D online sometime.
I would love that. That
Hey,
would be
there we go.
so
There we
awesome.
go. Yeah, let's do that. So
That would be
anytime you
amazing.
run an online one shot or something, let me know. I'd love to jump in and play with you guys. So
That would be incredible. We would love to have you. And that's. I mean, thank you so much. This was incredible. I can't wait to have you again. Honestly, I have a whole list of questions here that I didn't even go back to, because I felt like, everything that we had going on, I'll save them for the next episode.
Perfect. Perfect.
It's just an excuse to have you back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I'd love to be
Um,
here.
well, if you're looking to find my lovely self, you can find me on Instagram at Phoenix Stewart. You can also find the show on Instagram at Who What Now Pod. If you want to check out little snippets of what we're doing with our streaming on Twitch, and with the show, with future episodes and episodes that maybe you have missed previously, check those out on TikTok at Who What Now Pod is the official account for this show. Um, like I've said probably a billion times, everybody hears me say it, and you're probably tired of hearing me say it, but we do stream on Twitch every Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Come check us out, Phoenix Stewart. All links will be in the description of this episode. As we also like to do, we always like to shout out our tech guy, Noah, the whole reason that any of this is even possible. Thank you, Noah. Please go follow Noah on YouTube at Nerdy Noah Reads. Some
Hey, can I
amazing
just add
articles.
something about that?
Absolutely.
I don't know Noah personally, but yeah, I just knowing what a tech guy can do and support for a show, and that
Yes.
like
A
like
hundred
like a
percent.
show like this doesn't exist without support from awesome people like Noah, who do their thing and do it well, and step in to do things that you can't do. So yeah, yeah, good job, Noah. I don't know you,
Yeah.
but keep on doing what you do.
Absolutely. And that's why I always love to shout Noah out, because I don't think people understand like how much
I need a
work
Noah
goes into this stuff.
to do some editing for me. So
Listen, the amount of times where I've gone to start something and it doesn't work, and it's just like Noah could be out doing whatever, and he'll get a text message or a call from me being like, Noah, I think I broke it. Can you fix it? But yeah, go check out Nerdy Noah Reads on TikTok and on YouTube. And for those who have been following the show and following the TikTok and following on Twitch, we do know that my wife is writing a book, and we are always shouting these things out. So go follow Danny Reads Dirty Books. This is a spicy book, so know what you're getting into. But please go check that out. Check us out on all the social medias. And also, you mentioned a book earlier. Are we in the process where we can maybe announce anything for it?
yeah, how about this? When we've it's in the hand of an agent and a publisher right now. When we've got a deal and ready to go, we'll talk to you about my son's book. I'll invite myself back on your show when we're
Please do.
when we're ready to
Please
talk
do.
about his book, and also my feature film coming out. But yeah, it's not quite to that point.
Okay.
But when it is, for sure, I'll let you know. And yeah, so let's stay in contact with that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much once again for being here on the show. Thank you, all of our wonderful, wonderful listeners. We love you. We appreciate everything that you do for us on the show. And as always, go stare at go look into the sky, feel the sun on your face, hug a tree, high five a squirrel, and we will catch you on the next one.